Clearing mines in the Strait of Hormuz is not a simple sweeping operation. It is walking into a pre-sighted kill zone. Many civilian analysts will confidently tell you the US Navy can clear all the mines tomorrow, but they simply will not. What they fail to mention is how Iran uses smart influence mines not as a rigid wall, but as a deadly tactical funnel. This brilliant funnel forces specific ships right into the direct crosshairs of drone swarms and shore-based missiles. Here is the highly classified tactical reality regarding the network that absolutely no one in the media is talking about. You must elevate your understanding by introducing the terrifying concept of an anti-access area denial kill web system. Iranian forces are absolutely not using a blind and outdated World War II-style blockade to control these vital waters. They are instead running a highly sophisticated selective blockade designed to trap specific billion-dollar naval assets. Somewhere beneath the dark water, buried deep in silt on the seafloor, sits a steel cylinder waiting for the right prey. No military radar sees it, no satellite detects it, it emits no signal, generates no heat, and makes absolutely no sound. To truly grasp the situation, you must stop looking at these underwater explosives as the primary weapon of this conflict. In the brutal geometry of modern naval warfare, the thousands of mines scattered across the seafloor act merely as the anvil. The devastating hammer in this equation consists of shore-based anti-ship missiles and swarms of IRGC fast attack boats. Naval mines operate on a brilliant principle that makes them fundamentally different from every other weapon in modern combat. While a cruise missile broadcasts a radar return and a submarine generates acoustic noise, a mine on the seafloor emits nothing. It remains completely invisible to every active detection system a warship carries because there is simply no energy to detect. The cost arithmetic is devastating when a cheap explosive device threatens a $2 billion Arleigh Burke-class destroyer. This extreme asymmetry forces commanders to hesitate before entering the anvil where the coastal missile hammer is waiting to strike. A piece of steel invented during the American Civil War still owns the most lopsided and terrifying cost ratio in maritime combat. Let us analyze the geography, because the Strait of Hormuz is actually 21 nautical miles wide across the water. The traffic separation scheme divides this vast space into two highly restrictive navigable lanes for all large vessels. They do not need to blindly mine the entire strait like a massive and uncoordinated World War II-era naval operation. By strategically seeding the outbound lanes of the traffic separation scheme, they create a terrifying tactical bottleneck. This brilliant placement forces international shipping into narrow corridors pre-sighted by their coastal artillery units. These explosives act as a horrifying insurance weapon where fear alone can entirely close the strait to global commerce. When a single tanker strikes a hidden charge, the resulting market panic immediately sinks every maritime insurance policy. Modern bottom mines do not need to be physically touched. They are programmed to detonate for specific hostile targets. They are programmed to detonate only when they detect the specific acoustic and magnetic signature of a hostile warship. These brilliant bottom-dwelling influence weapons sit in the dark mud and detonate entirely without any direct contact. They utilize a magnetometer detecting a steel hull alongside a hydrophone, listening closely for heavy propeller noise. These smart systems will patiently let a massive Chinese commercial oil tanker sail right over them completely unharmed. However, the exact moment the acoustic profile of an Allied tanker or an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer passes, it fires. The internal computer processors filter out the unwanted noise of small craft while constantly waiting for the high-value prey. Some of these incredibly advanced smart mines are designed to intimately detect the prop wash or wake anomalies of a heavy vessel. By analyzing these specific water disturbances, they can flawlessly ignore all the smaller decoy boats completely. This brings us to the most dangerous underwater weapon in the entire region, which is officially designated as the EM-52. This is a rocket-propelled rising mine that terrifyingly hunts upward through the water column at 260 feet per second. You simply cannot armor any modern warship against a catastrophic weapon that attacks directly from underneath at rocket speed. China originally designed this brutal piece of hardware, while Iran bought it to fortify their lethal maritime kill web. Contact mines that kill on touch and influence, mines that kill on signature are terrifying, but the rising EM-52 is a true nightmare. It waits silently in the absolute darkness for the exact moment to punch a massive hole directly through a vulnerable steel hull. In 1988, a cheap predecessor to these modern weapons nearly sank the frigate, USS Samuel B. Roberts. We must quickly move past these old historical anecdotes because the modern battlefield presents a much more terrifying friction. The U.S. Navy completely dominates the deep ocean, but the Strait of Hormuz forces them directly into treacherous littoral zones. These littoral zones are shallow and highly congested waters where billion-dollar destroyers operate at a distinct disadvantage. The complex friction of modern warfare dictates that operating massive ships in restricted waters is a monumental tactical error. When an advanced steel vessel enters these shallow coastal regions, it loses the vast geographic protection of the open blue ocean. Inside these congested littoral environments, the invisible underwater anvil is perfectly aligned with the coastal missile hammer. Any military commander understands that pushing a high-value asset into this specific shallow trap is a catastrophic miscalculation. Deploying slow-moving minesweepers without establishing complete force protection from shore-to-ship missiles is a suicide mission. The complex friction of modern warfare dictates that advanced technology cannot operate blindly without a secure protective bubble. Deploying massive MH-53E Sea Dragon helicopters to drag acoustic sleds through the water turns them into massive sitting ducks. These slow airborne assets become immediate targets for cheap drone swarms and hidden coastal air defense artillery batteries. Operating any traditional fiberglass minesweeper in this contested environment without establishing absolute air dominance is fatal. The moment these specialized clearance vessels enter the narrow strait, they fall perfectly into the lethal crosshairs of the hammer. This is precisely why the most advanced underwater clearance systems in the world remain safely anchored far outside the kill zone. Instead of sending vulnerable sailors into this terrifying minefield, the U.S. Navy engineered 4 brilliant unmanned systems. The first step utilizes an advanced laser system designated as ALMDS-A, AES-1, which is securely mounted beneath a helicopter. This incredible aerial system fires intense pulses of LiDAR light downward to penetrate the dark surface of the dangerous water. A powerful streak tube receiver captures the reflected photons and processes them into a three-dimensional map of the threats. This airborne laser essentially acts as a massive CT scan for the strait, mapping floating explosives without touching the water. However, laser light simply cannot reach the deep sea floor where the most dangerous bottom-dwelling influence weapons are waiting. To hunt these specific deep threats, the Navy deploys the AQS-20C mine hunting sonar towed by an unmanned surface vehicle. This robotic CUSV boat is remotely controlled by a single operator stationed safely aboard an LCS located far outside the kill zone. Advanced signal processing algorithms brilliantly distinguish these deadly metal cylinders from ordinary rocks and natural coral. This automated robotic boat can relentlessly operate for 20 hours continuously without risking a single human life in the water. Finding these hidden explosives is simply not enough, because the smartest influence weapons must be actively tricked into detonating. The Navy brilliantly solves this with the unmanned influence sweep system, which tows a magnetic cable and an acoustic sound generator. Together, these advanced robotic systems perfectly simulate the massive signature of a supertanker displacing 300,000 tons. They brilliantly replicate the exact magnetic field alongside heavy propeller noise and hull cavitation to trick the sensors below. The hidden influence mine on the dark seafloor detects the fake signal, causing its triggers to align and detonate against an empty ocean. This creates a brilliant reverse mousetrap where the robotic system safely lures the explosive device into complete self-destruction. For any stubborn explosive that refuses to fire against a decoy, the Navy deploys the Archerfish from an MH-60S Seahawk helicopter. This is a highly advanced and expendable underwater drone, lowered carefully on a fiber optic cable equipped with sonar and a camera. An operator sitting safely in the helicopter watches real-time video as the drone swims directly to the target for visual confirmation. Once confirmed, the operator presses a single button to detonate a shaped charge that directs explosive energy to destroy the threat. We must now push our tactical analysis further to expose a critical vulnerability that defense contractors deliberately ignore. No matter how incredibly advanced these autonomous UUV systems are for detecting threats, they possess absolutely no armor. These multi-million-dollar robotic assets, floating on the surface, become immediate and highly visible targets for cheap weapons. When you deploy autonomous underwater vehicles into a contested strait, they become literal sitting ducks without air support. A single, massive swarm of incredibly cheap suicide drones can easily rip apart an entire fleet of advanced robotic sweepers. This brutal reality of modern combat proves that advanced detection technology is completely useless without force protection. The complex friction of modern warfare brutally punishes any military force that sends unprotected assets into a literal trap. This is the exact reason why the most capable mine-hunting network on Earth currently sits paralyzed outside the danger zone. The brilliant commanders of the military do not care about media headlines because they are busy solving a massive tactical equation. If you attempt to sweep underwater explosives while the enemy is actively manufacturing them, you will never finish the clearance mission. The strategic solution requires completely shutting off the faucet of weapons production before sending valuable assets into the water. A massive military campaign has successfully destroyed numerous Iranian vessel fleets alongside their dedicated manufacturing facilities. The explosives currently resting on the seafloor of the strait are the absolute last weapons that Iran will ever be able to deploy. Every single device that gets successfully cleared is one that will never be replaced by their completely shattered industrial complex. However, the highly advanced robotic sweeping vessels still require a massive protective bubble before they can safely begin their hard work. This heavily armored protective bubble has a specific name, and it is officially known as the Massive Amphibious Assault Ship USS Tripoli. This incredible warship is currently speeding toward the dangerous region, carrying a massive payload of stealth fighters and armed marines. The essential mine clearance operation absolutely will not begin until this overwhelming aerial protection force is perfectly in position. The incredibly dangerous explosives resting on the seafloor do not check the nationality of the massive commercial vessels passing overhead. Iran normally exports over 1 million barrels of valuable crude oil per day, and nearly all of it must travel safely through this strait. Since these terrifying underwater weapons went active, the vital Iranian crude loadings at their primary coastal export facilities collapsed. Cautious tanker operators simply will not send vulnerable vessels into a strait where the insurance premium exceeds the cargo profit margin. The Iranian military deliberately built a devastating weapon to close the strategic strait to everyone else, but it actually trapped them. These invisible underwater mines represent a brutal economic siege, and they are currently working perfectly for the opposing naval forces. Every day, these silent explosives sit patiently on the dark seafloor. The Iranian government hemorrhages revenue it will never recover. The U.S. Navy will eventually clear the dangerous strait with their advanced lasers and precision robotic drones entirely on American timing. They will only execute this massive clearance operation when the incredibly complex tactical equation finally reaches its absolute optimum. Here is the billion-dollar strategic question regarding this incredibly complex and dangerous geopolitical maritime standoff in the region. These weapons are actively hurting the Chinese oil supply right now, significantly more than they are damaging the massive U.S. economy today. Perhaps the naval commanders should simply leave those explosives exactly where they are and let Beijing deal with this devastating mess. Let me know your detailed tactical takedown regarding this controversial strategy in the comments below so we can continue the discussion.